going into it, I guess I was kind of naive as a first-time home buyer who was still living at home under my parents' roof. I guess going into it, I was kind of naive, and I didn't know about quite all the things to expect as a new homeowner. Like the closing costs, for example. You have closing costs whenever you move into a new complex, because those closing costs, they'll cover things like hydro hookup of your electricity, hookup of your water, the planting of trees, development charges. And plus, it's very strongly recommended, it might be law in some places, but very strongly recommended that whenever you do a home purchase, that you also hire yourself a lawyer as well too, because what the lawyer can do certain things that are much more difficult for you, the individual, to do. Like they can do things like check the land registry. Also, they can do a check on that home to see if there's any liens against it, because if you're moving into a newly purchased home, you don't know what the circumstances were of the people that were living there before. You don't know if they took out a mortgage or borrowed money against that home and put a lien against it. And guess what? If you move into that newly purchased home, there's a lien against it, even if it's not from you, it's from the previous people, you could end up losing that home. So lawyers, they'll do a bunch of searches and checks to make sure that home is free and clear to purchase, and be able to let you know what they found on that home and all that stuff. And there's also environmental fees. There's basically the takeaway lesson. There is all kinds. As a first-time home buyer, sit down and talk to your parents or your grandparents or aunts, uncles, or talk to some business people like bankers, lawyers, or whoever. Talk to people in the know that have more experience than you, that have owned homes before and everything. Like my parents, they've owned several homes, so they know what they're doing and everything. Have a talk with someone who knows what they're doing, and make sure to find out, do your homework, find out everything, or as much as possible, that you need to know about purchasing that new home, so that your new home purchase will remain a dream and not become a nightmare. I mean, like, now you can search for stuff on Google, but when it comes to purchasing a new home, like a lot of us have seen those model homes. Like they have these beautifully done up model homes. You walk in there, they have all the top of the line, top quality, most expensive options that are available, all in that model home, to try to entice you to spend as much money as possible. And they'll tell you all the good things about the home, of course. Like, they'll make you an excellent sales pitch and everything. And I fell in love with the fact that this place is right by the lake in a nice quiet community. But do I regret? So anyways, after having that talk with my parents, I basically came to the conclusion that, you know what, maybe I'm not quite as prepared to purchase this place as I thought I was. And shortly after that, maybe about a year after that, I did end up purchasing myself another place. I purchased a condominium apartment in Brantford, Ontario. And it was a nice apartment and everything, but I'm not going to lie to you, I do regret purchasing a condo. And in my mind, my recommendation, everyone is free to make their own decisions and everything, but my recommendation is do not buy a condo, because I know here in the Canadian province of Ontario, if you rent a place, rent an apartment or a house or whatever, then they have certain laws, like they have a landlord-tenant association or tenant act, and they have certain laws and certain certain regulations that regulate things like rent control. Now, there's rent control here in Ontario, so they regulate how much your rent is allowed to go up per year. Your landlord needs to get permission from a rent control board if they want to raise your rent over a certain amount. Generally, they're only allowed to raise it usually around the rate of inflation, which is generally around 1.5% to 2% a year. And if they want to raise it more than that, then they have to get permission to do that, and they have to give you, I think it's either 60 or 90 days of written notice to do that. Now, at the time of this video, I don't know of any laws in Ontario governing condo ownership, because I remember when I lived in my condo in Brantford, there was one year that my condo fees went from $147 a month to $199 a month, and we only had 8 days warning that this was going to happen. And not only did my condo fees increase by $52 a month, but they also added something called a special assessment. So what a special assessment is when they add an additional monthly fee on top of your regular condo fees, but it's a temporary fee. So a special assessment can last anywhere from 1 month to 12 months. And it's their way of adding an additional fee if it's just a temporary fee, and they don't want that to become a permanent part of your condo fees. So do your homework, talk to people in the know, and find out as much as you can before you purchase a home, or even before moving out, even just before renting a place. You know, there's certain things you should know. As beautiful as this place is, do I regret changing my mind and getting back my deposit? At times I do, because these homes, I know these homes have accumulated in value. They've appreciated in value for sure. And you could see by the footage that it's an absolutely beautiful community. But in a way, I don't really regret not buying my place, because it is a condo after all. Even though condo fees started out at less than $100 a month, I'm wondering now what their current condo fees are. For all I know, their condo fees might have tripled or quadrupled or even quintupled by now. So, yeah. Just be careful. And also another thing too, the reason I was able to get my deposit back in Ontario, I don't know what the legislation is now, but at least at that time, the province of Ontario had something called a cooling off period, a 10-day cooling off period, where if you change your mind about putting down a deposit on something like a new home, a car, even a fitness membership, you have 10 calendar days to let them know, as long as it was a deposit and not a down payment. You have 10 calendar days to let them know, you know what, I've changed my mind, I want my deposit back. And by law, they have to give you back your deposit. Like at that time, it was within 10 days after the deposit was made. Don't know what the current legislation is now, but you might want to check with your local consumer relations board to see what the legislation is concerning that now. And, you know, moving forward up to date, I got out of that condo in Brantford. I just wasn't happy with how things were going there. The costs were ridiculous. I'm now living in an apartment in London, Ontario, Canada. Very happy with my apartment. I'm paying an excellent price. As a matter of fact, I'm paying such a low price in this apartment that I'm going to clutch onto this apartment like a 3-year-old clutches on to a teddy bear. Because I know that if I were to move out of that apartment, they could rent it for a lot more than they're currently renting it to me for. And if I were to find myself a new apartment, chances are I'm not going to find an apartment at least in London, Ontario, for that low price that I'm paying right now. So, you know what? Everything has worked out in the end. Just because you might change your mind and get cold feet or might get talked out of making a purchase, a lot of times it's for a good reason. A lot of the times things will work out in the end. So, home ownership can be very rewarding, but it can also be a nightmare if you're not properly prepared for it. So I hope that you go in, if you decide to go into home ownership, become a homeowner, let's hope you're properly prepared for it.